Okay, that looks a bit better. Sorry if you were seeing a flashing screen because it was flashing, and I have no idea why. Just having a quick squiz through the forex news as viewed by Forex Factory, and I'm just trying to get a handle on what Ms. May actually achieved yesterday, apart from getting herself into more bother. Apparently, she flew to Europe somewhere and tried to renegotiate or to see what was actually happening. I don't see anything there that indicates that, but I do see stuff there that indicates that she's in a whole lot of bother, and it would appear they're going to have a vote of no confidence in her this day. Perhaps we shall see. Ash will be joining us very, very shortly, and I'm sure he'll be all over that. And I can't wait to find out, to be fair, exactly what's going on. So let's wait and see what Ash has got to report when he does pop in. And that'll be in the near future. In fact, I think I can hear him rustling in the background. Before he does join us, we've got one trade in the market not doing so well, as a matter of fact. We traded the Aussie long this morning on this bar, and got a dreadful bar. I hate these long bars that just take you in by a couple of pips. And now we're rocketing back in the opposite direction. So not a great position there at the moment. We've got the daily pivot there, hopefully to save us, and the bottom of that range that we've been looking at for quite some time. That's the only thing that I do have in the market at the moment. Aussie yen. Not sure if we took that in the show yesterday or not. On the 30-minute chart, we certainly took it yesterday, but I'm not sure whether it was in this show or otherwise. Pretty much trading exactly the same thing as we're trading on the Aussie at the moment, and trading this bar here. That went to target, guys. If you managed it correctly, you should have got that one no problem. And happy days with that. It was very, very tight here on the return voyage, if you like, or the retracement, whether your trailing stop would have been hit or not. It would depend entirely how you managed it. Some may have got hit by less than one pip, and that would have been tragic given what happened thereafter. So hopefully you got the lot, and if so, happy days. Ash, you with us?
I certainly am, mate. Yeah.
How you doing?
I'm not too bad. Yeah. We had a little bit of a sticky night. Sorry, mate. Bit of a sticky night here, but I'm just getting my head together now.
Okay, jolly good show. Well, if you had a sticky night, how did Theresa May go with her little trip to Europe? Did she win any friends, or has she come back and now she's apparently in the hostile position of maybe a vote of no confidence today?
Yeah. I think as I said before, it's so difficult to know what's going to happen with Theresa May because she's so resilient. But I just think this has been coming for it's been coming for a while, and it's just looking more and more likely that she's eventually going to get the chop. Um, as I say, it's been coming for a while. It's actually been coming for 2 years, so I'm impressed that it's managed to last this
Standing on
long.
this one, mate. What
Yeah,
does that do to us? If today, let's say today, she does not survive a vote of no confidence, and it happens does it happen as early as today? Is she gone as early as today?
I don't think so. I think what's probably going to happen, they've got to get 48
Letters, apparently.
MPs
Yep.
sending a letter of required no confidence but the Queen has to give her first, she has to give her a fighting chance. So if she loses the vote of no confidence, she can actually re-challenge. But if she loses the second one, then it's all over. And I suspect, considering it's Theresa May, she probably will re-challenge.
Right. Okay.
It's just, I think we're just in a lot of trouble with the pound, and it could come right the way right. Where were we before? Well, looking at this chart here, let me show you what I've got,
Sure.
because we have to think about what does this mean technically for the pound. We know that the fundamentals are looking really grim, and you sometimes wonder whether you should just get into a trade without a setup when you get such clear indication of problems. But Obviously, we're not going to do that. Right, let me show you what I would surmise at this point. So this is the pound, and you've got to start looking at these longer term charts, and it just looks like we're going to come right the way back here where the Lancaster House speech was. It looks to me like we're dragging right down to one. Well, I suppose you could say 1.2. So we're about what 50 odd pips from that point, but it looks like we're going to come back down to here, right the way down to here. This is a weekly chart. After that, looking at this monthly, let's see what we got. It doesn't look like on the monthly. Looks like that's the low. That's the lowest point that I've got on my chart. I don't know if you've got anything lower, but it looks like on the monthly, the lowest point on the chart is down here. So, you know, if that area gives way, then there's some seriously open water, and
I've got
we could
nothing below there, mate.
nothing below there. So, you know, anything below that point is going to be extremely difficult, you know, for Theresa May to hold the pound up, and I suspect that's probably what's going to happen. But there's going to be some open water down there, and it could be that this is, as Brexit kind of happened, that could be the point that is priced in, and we could float around there until we get some clarity on what's going to happen with Brexit, or we could actually give that point away. And then be waiting for just the whole Brexit debacle to clear up. The Europeans have actually said that the UK doesn't legally have to trigger. It doesn't legally have to leave without the 27's consent. So there's a little bit of light in the tunnel, I guess. You could sort of say that there's a bit of light in the tunnel with that. If they decide just to reverse it without a referendum, without taking the vote any further, you know, they could actually save the pound, if you like, from this point. But I think that's probably unlikely, because this is really a power struggle now, and that's being depicted in the market. You know, this is almost less about Brexit and more about you know, how the power is going to try and be wrestled from the Conservatives to Labour. But it's in such an unconventional way. It's not like there's an election coming up. This is a very unusual scenario and an unusual situation. So she needs she needs a bit of support. So sorry, the Labour Party need a bit of support. The SNP, which is the Scottish National Party, they're going to support the Labour Party, and that means that they'll be negotiating Brexit if it's those guys that actually manage to wrestle the power from Theresa May. And if it's the Scottish Nationals that are negotiating Brexit, I can tell you for sure that Brexit will not be happening. So the picture is very, very interesting because of who might be part of that leadership coup.
So
and that, at that point, yeah,
if the Swiss National Party,
yeah, Scottish,
Swiss,
yeah,
yeah, sorry, yeah, let's call them Scottish because that's who they are.
yeah.
If they were to wrestle power, and
Yeah.
as you say, there's no Brexit, we don't go there. Can the pound rally on that?
Oh, undoubtedly, yeah. Yeah, it will rally, because this is all about Brexit. This is all about the lack of confidence in the UK, and the pound will rally from the back of that. The interesting thing comes when you consider that you know, markets are about business investment as much as anything else. And I've got to ask myself the question: why would anybody want to be investing in a country that you know, really doesn't know what direction it's going in? And that will be a problem. The Scottish National Party won't be the ones that wrestle power. They will be the ones that support Labour in wrestling power. Labour are the only ones that can wrestle power. They're the biggest party, so the only ones that can wrestle power. But they need allies. And the Scottish National Party could be one of their allies, and they probably will, because they've got quite a few seats. And if they are one of their allies, then Brexit will be. It's going to be so unlikely that it's going to happen from that point. Forget the referendum. You know,
that point, sadly, we don't know. We're guessing as to when that might be, unfortunately, and that's an issue because we don't really know. And it's tough not to be thinking short pound, of course. But if that were to happen quickly, and you know, as early as overnight, we've got a new ball game on our hands very, very quickly.
Yes, we do. I mean, the other side of this, obviously, is that the Conservatives could throw somebody new into the leadership. So it's not like they would have lost power. It's just that the vote of no confidence could come in, and it throws the whole thing into turmoil again. The Conservatives will not want to give up power that easily. Boris Johnson will be waiting in the wings, and he will probably be the Tory that the Tories put up for power. But I don't know whether Boris Johnson's as popular as they believe he is. So I would be a little bit sceptical to say that the Conservatives will be able to remain in power, even with a new leader. And even with someone like Boris. See, Boris Johnson was very popular, but I think his stock has depleted quite significantly. Um, because he was one of the main protagonists in the huge lie about what we were going to get, and he continues to do that. And everybody knows that he's a career politician, and you know his play on Brexit was actually for us to remain. So then he could kind of come in as the lever, and you know start to bring the party together because the levers would have been on his side, but because we got Remain, he would accept the Remain vote. So there's a lack of faith in Boris Johnson, but again, you know, he's another guy who manages to skirt quite a few bullets, you know, that aim towards him. So it's possible that I could be wrong on that, but you know, from my personal perspective, I think he's a pretty awful character. So I'm not too sure whether he would beat Jeremy Corbyn in a head-to-head, but he may. He's very gifted when it comes down to being a politician.
Okay. So initially, well, I don't know about initially, my thoughts today were if we can find a rally somewhere, which was doubtful, it's always going to
Yeah.
be doubtful, on the pound or the pound pairs, that maybe there's an opportunity to get short. But that's not just as simple as it sounds.
No, it absolutely isn't, and I think this is the thing is that we probably had an opportunity yesterday because actually the pound had some pretty good news actually, you know, pretty good numbers, um, and but then the dollar also came out with some fairly healthy numbers as well. So with the dollar, you know, actually managing to rally off the back of that, the pound suffered along with a lot of the other currency pairs. Um, but you know, you only have to look at the pound against everything else to recognise that the dollar rallying against the other currency pairs didn't really help because this is the euro versus the pound, and we saw a gap and then go, and that will potentially continue as well. I mean, we're getting very close to all-time highs. We're not too far away from this area now. Parity that was called by the end of the year in euro pound, which I was scoffing at, looks fairly um, probable now. You know, this could happen. This could rally right the way up to this point. Maybe not quite parity, but it could get pretty close to parity. So we're not too far away from the pound collapsing against the euro. We're not too far away from the pound collapsing against. This is the Swissy on the monthly chart. This is the yen on a monthly chart. You know, the pound yen. So the pound just across the board is the selling opportunity. But what's going to now give us the way in, which did it actually, as I say, it did appear yesterday. You know, this was the pound yesterday as it kind of rallied to this point here. That was an opportunity to try and get in short. I'm not saying there's a setup there, but yeah, this is the thing. There's that was the high of the day. But the other thing we've got to contend with when we're looking at these markets here, and I have to consider this. This area here is an embedded and then oversold and then embedded, and it rallied. This area was near oversold and it rallied. Now we're lower than that point now. And you know, when we look at these on a technical level, you look at these indicators. Indicators suggest that we are at a point where it could rally. And this one again, another one that's embedded, which is a very difficult and dangerous place to be when it's embedded, because when it's embedded like this, the indicator just stops working. But what can happen at this point is that you can just get this bungee, you know, where it just starts to really kind of take off. I mean, you see how the indicator, the steep movement in the indicator here, steep movement in the indicator here. You know, you can just get this bungee kind of action when it comes down to looking at this RSI. This one's oversold pretty much. Sorry, pretty close. Pound. What was my Aussie? Pound Aussie as well. Here it is, Pound Aussie. Pound Aussie is showing some divergence. So this is the other aspect of it. It's not all about the fundamentals when you kind of look at these indicators. But the Pound Aussie is at a fairly significant level. Well, it is at a very significant level when you think there's a daily chart here. Very significant level there, as we've already said. The dollar, pound dollar is getting to significant levels. So these lows are going to be very, very difficult to try and trade. Given the state of that indicator and given the state of where the price action is. So if I was going to trade this short, I'd be a little uncomfortable trading it, much below this point.
Yeah.
But
this
is
if she gets overthrown, if she does get kicked out, and we do get let's call it an alternate. It won't be a government yet, but let's say we get to the point where Brexit is thrown off the table, thrown out, and this thing does turn around, or pound US dollar turns around very quickly anyway, and are we back at 150? Is that possible?
For the dollar?
Pound dollar?
Pound dollar. Difficult with the pound dollar because the dollar's got other things, but let's have a look at that. So if we consider the wider picture on this, where does the longer term time frames kind of get us to? And it's this point here, or maybe this point here. Now that isn't quite 150, and that would be the point that I would suspect that it's somewhere in this range actually, isn't it? Somewhere in that range, you kind of like think that there could be some further pressure with the pound. So I'm not convinced about the 150, straight away. This is a really interesting trend line as well.
No, I think it'll take some time to get back there. I really
do. I completely agree. I completely agree. Even with that deal, what then happens to the data starts to become a little bit more prevalent. And then we start to switch to Mark Carney, which is what we want, isn't it? We want to be not focusing on geopolitics, and we want to be focusing on the numbers. Now, as I said yesterday, the numbers were pretty stellar. For Mark Carney to actually have some ability and wiggle room to actually start raising interest rates, they were decent. We consider that the average wage earnings is the number that needs to increase when inflation increases, for Mark Carney to recognise that the British people can handle an interest rate rise. And as I said, it was a very, very good number yesterday. So we can start focusing on those. And I guess going into next year, then maybe we start to see a turn. And I do find the calendar an interesting factor. I was talking last night to my girlfriend on this, and we were saying, we were talking about Bitcoin, and I found the Bitcoin story. I find the Bitcoin story pretty fascinating, and this is why I find it really fascinating. Is that this was the first. The very last month of last year, and this was the first month of last year, and that was the huge turning point. Sorry, this year, as this year started, that was the huge turning point in Bitcoin. And when we consider that the rally in Bitcoin really started at the start of the month, it's the first month of the year as well. It comes up and it comes right the way back down again. Now that's not hugely unusual. Every year there is the weakest currency in the pack. And the question is, will next year be the weakest? Will the pound be the weakest currency in the pack? And my suspicion would be probably not, because it's been the weakest currency in the pack for this year. So this was where the year started for the pound.
What?
I beg your pardon, mate?
I said, hasn't it? What? Yes.
Yeah. So that was the very first month of last year, and then ever since then it's down. And I think you could probably bring up just about any other currency against the pound, and that would be the case. So I think maybe January, February we start to see the pound stabilize a little bit, but then I think that maybe we need to get Brexit out of the way in March, But then I think the pound could potentially be a buying opportunity into next year. It might be the first quarter, it might be the second quarter, it might be midway through the year. But when we can focus on the fundamentals and the data, then I think that we probably start to see the pound rally off the back of pretty decent numbers.
Looking forward to that. Not necessarily the pound rally, but getting back to being able to rely on what's surrounded by data and
Yeah,
interest rates. Back to a position where these are pretty easy numbers to read rather than Brexit negotiations, which are extremely difficult to read
absolutely, mate. And you
and
know what?
and bank
That's
on.
the thing about that is that for us as looking for intraday trades, the fundamentals being more about data is just so much simpler to trade than all this geopolitics, because you just don't know what's going to happen. Especially with the birth of Twitter and social media. Trump is a huge player in when it comes down to moving the markets on the back of a comment on Twitter. And whereas before it might have been the next day, that's just not the case anymore, is it? It's just that it's that minute.
Yeah, well, let's turn our attention over to that part of the world, I suppose, just for a minute, and talk about the Donald, who, as you say, has got this amazing ability to turn the market on a tweet. This time, the latest one I've seen is that he's willing to overrule whatever is going on with the little lady who's in jail here at the moment. He's saying that he's willing to get her out,
Oh,
and
interesting.
yeah, I kind of read that somewhere in the last hour or so. So whether that's just Donald or whether that's actual that's his intent, well, it will remain to be seen, of course. So does that then mean, if that's the case, and how does the market react to that? Because the
Well,
market reacted very, very strongly when she was impounded, if you like.
yes, absolutely. Do you know what? I find that one a really interesting story as well, because yesterday the Chinese said that they would reduce the tariffs on the US car manufacturing industry. US car sales. So it was going to go from 40% to 15%. So, and then Donald Trump came out and tweeted and said there's some exciting things going on in the background. So maybe that's what he's talking about. Now, I don't think it's any different than what we've seen with the FTSE 100. And the FTSE 100 did have a rally. We were talking about the fact that the FTSE would try and form some sort of bullish price action on the eventually on the monthly. And if I consider the FTSE 100 now, we've had a little bit of a hold down here, and we've gapped up this morning so far, and we've still got a little ways to go where we still end up in a bear market, but we are able to push forward, and it's that kind of thing that is going to help the FTSE 100 out. I mean, it's just stopped here on the weekly pivot. Now I have been trading this, but kind of quietly in the background. And what you were saying yesterday about, is it time to stop trading on this? And Julian said absolutely not. And I kind of agree with him, unless you're in a position where you have made decent enough profit for the month to not really have to worry about it, because the rhetoric is positive today, and that would suggest some buying opportunities. But the market is a bear market, so the position of difficulty still remains. Now, if we are going to pick this FTSE 100 up, I'd like to switch to this hourly chart here, because there's a pretty nice little trend line going on along here. And what was quite interesting with this is that it did react really well to the RSI at this point here. It didn't quite come down as deep as it should, or as it could, but it reacted really well to the third bounce of this RSI, and now it's traveling back down here. Now, what I really like to see is when RSI trend line matches the price action trend line, and what this RSI is telling me is that the daily pivot looks to me like a decent area to try and pick this one back up again. And I've got to draw my almost a new trend line in here to give me that daily pivot, and we'll have a look. No, it's not going to be too precise at that point, but let's have a look at this one. Now I always have to look out for this. Maybe we're looking at that. I always have to look out for this because what can happen is if this overshoots a little bit, then we actually see the RSI close below the trend line, and that kind of changes the aspect. You know, this was an absolutely perfect bounce yesterday. It was a massively clean tradable opportunity as it came down, because you can see it didn't penetrate. It closed at low and then it took off. Now we aren't quite open yet, but this is going to be quite interesting to see what happens. I think that we could be coming down low enough um, to actually penetrate this RSI, and that's going to change the picture. So what do we do today? Really the answer to that is that it looks at this point to me like we are actually waiting for some clarity on the technicals, not on the fundamentals, but on the technicals. I think we're waiting for clarity, because this could easily collapse because of the bear market that we're in. But what you're telling me about Donald Trump would suggest that we would more likely rally.
Okay, trading that, you're not going to trade it down to there, but you'd like to see it down there so you can actually pick it up, yeah?
Yeah, I think that the daily pivot, this trend line would be a really good area to start looking for signs and signals of stability, and then see if we can pick it up, and then drive it forward for this end of year Santa rally, and see if we can get it back up to 7,000 plus.
Well, certainly pre-open is giving us a little bit of indicator that might be the case, that we're going to visit the daily pivot. So, yeah, well,
Yeah, and just on that, the you were talking about the Aussie. Now I do the same thing with I see the same thing with the Aussie. Now I'm going to use a different chart here again. So on the hourly with the Aussie, very similar, and they are fairly close bedfellows when it comes down to currencies and indices. But look at that. Now that suggests to me that the Aussie again, it holds here, especially with this reversal bar, is going to look pretty good for a rally. So if the Aussie and the FTSE both look pretty good for a rally, that's going to suggest that world markets are going to be buying opportunities today. So this actually could help this particular currency out as well.
Hope you're right. I'm 20 pips to the negative on the Aussie at the moment. So that's good.
Yeah.
Look, I agree with the Aussie. Look, it's a great place to pick the Aussie up, to be fair, but it's exactly the wrong candle that took us into the trade. So we've just got to hang on here and hope the daily pivot is the catalyst for change, and see if we can get something out of that going forward. If we do, I'm only going to take profit once here and let it fly, because I think this can actually go somewhere. And
Yeah.
that is my really trade for the month if it comes off. But yeah, a little bit of fiddling to do yet.
I think the only thing about the Aussie, and it's a difficult one, the Aussie, because actually when I bring in the longer term time frames, then I have almost the counter picture. It does suggest upside still, but this is what I get with my RSI on the Aussie on the daily, and that starts to suggest that this could be a test area to start coming back to the downside again. And again, looking at the price action and how the price action is working, that looks like a break and a potential test. The RSI looks like a break and a potential test. So this is the only other issue with the Aussie. Do the longer term aspects come into play?
Look, there's always a case for both directions in my
Yes, there
opinion.
is, and this is the thing. If you're looking for the short side, then I think this looks pretty good for some upside. And as you say, aiming for a target that is probably achievable, and then seeing if it will go. Because if it does take out these highs, then it will go. But if you're looking for something else, then it's possible that this actually could start to weaken again here. You've already looked at news and data for the day.
Look, I haven't put it up. We might as well do that. There's CPI figures, which will be very important. In particular, with a week to go before the Fed meet.
Yeah.
Give us the final interest rate rise, perhaps for the foreseeable future. So this will be an interesting number. We'll be watching this very closely.
Yes, it will. Yes, it will. Actually, forecast suggests weakness. And do you know what? This I don't know if you've ever looked at this before, but when forecast suggests weakness, have you ever seen whether that actually, the buy the rumor, trade the news kind of thing,
Hmm.
that would suggest some weakness in the dollar before those numbers actually come out, wouldn't it?
You would think, yes.
So that's the other aspect of it. If we're gonna be looking at news, this would suggest that this would actually be a pretty good buying opportunity right up into that news and data.
Yeah, we're probably a bit late for that, I think. If that was going to be, well, not necessarily, but if that was going to be the case, you would have really seen that buying by now, I would have thought.
Seen what? Sorry, mate.
I think you would have seen the buying or the selling of the dollar, if you like, if that
Yeah,
was to be the case. I think we probably would have already seen that. Look, probably to some degree we did. And I'm only looking at the Aussie at the moment because it's the only one that I think is reliable. The pound and the euro, have got other things going on, frankly.
yeah,
Maybe you could look at the Kiwi, the CAD, the yen. Maybe they're good indicators as well. I'll have a look at. Yeah, I'm not seeing that certainly in the last 3 or 4 days. I don't see that the market has bought into what you're suggesting is a bad CPI figure. So maybe
yeah,
there is an opportunity today to actually do that leading into that news event. Maybe there is. If the market hasn't done it prior, then why not? What else is going on?
yeah, yeah. Absolutely. Well, I see that
Well,
the
there's
dollar.
China. There's all
Yeah,
sorts of things going on. That is the
yeah.
answer to that question. But yeah, go
Actually,
ahead.
just looking at the market right now, I don't see a great deal of opportunity. I've got to say, it's a fairly quiet looking market, and I think it's going to be a tough old day today, mate. I've got to say.
Yeah, I'm not entirely wrapped with what I've seen in the early parts of the day. That's for sure. We've now got new bars, of course. The market is open, so maybe we should just have a quick look at that. You're not looking to trade anything at the moment.
Not just yet. No, not just yet. I'm looking at Aussie yen for a potential long. Maybe some dollar weakness against the Aussie as well, but I don't see anything really clean. I quite like that Aussie yen. Um,
Did I trade that in this show yesterday, or was in the later show?
I think it was this show. I'm pretty sure you put something in. Aussie Sing looks pretty good too. Actually, the Aussie looks like a pretty good prospect actually at this stage.
Yeah, well, as I say, in about 20 pips time, and I get back to normal, I'll be happy to see that. I'm looking at the Aussie at the moment, and if I wasn't in this long on the 4 hour time frame and negative, I'd probably be looking to get in on that last bar on the 30-minute candle. But it being the first candle of UK session, I'm not a fan of trading that one, but that looks decent. Do you want me to go through a few pairs?
Yeah, let's do it, mate. Let's do it.
Give
Far
your
me back.
fragile voice a bit of a break.
Yeah, do you know? Yeah, yeah. Tough night last night.
What was on, mate? It's just welcome home.
No, no, well, I think it's a little bit of jet lag for me, but also I had a toddler that decided not to go to sleep at by 3 o'clock. All of a sudden, I had another little beast next to me, and
Okay.
that makes it very difficult to sleep. So
I see.
yeah,
All right, fair enough. I thought it might have been a celebration rather than rather than
no, far from it. Oh no, what are you doing in
not the case. All
here?
right, let's talk about this Aussie, shall we? I've been singing its praises for I don't know the whole week and just looking for an entry. And I thought I found a reasonable one on the 4 hour chart this morning when I got a break of what was a trend line coming through here and then a nice retest of it and a rejection of the daily pivot. I thought that was the signal to go, but then some goat pressed the wrong button here and put this big bull bar in and took me in. And then the retracement, of course, the inevitable retracement after a big bar like that has taken place. I've got my stops down here. Relative comfort with that, probably more comfortable under here, but you know, relative comfort here. I think if we can get clear here, we've got a real shot at this.
Yeah.
At this, you know, up towards 73 and beyond, perhaps. So even if this fails, I'll be looking for another opportunity to get in here, providing that we don't break this level, because this level here is crucial, I think.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if I look at the daily chart, that's the level I'm talking about. I think it all starts to break down at that point. So if we do get below here, I think there's an issue. But whilst ever we're here, I think we've got a real chance. And for that reason, I'm more than happy to go with it. Aussie yen that we did trade yesterday, as I said, that was a nice entry on the 30-minute chart, trading this bar. And if you have a look at this scenario here with these three candles, and then take it back to the Aussie on the 4-hour chart, exactly the same three candles that I'm trading. So one's worked. Let's see if we can get the other one home. The difference here is marked. However, you see how we've just come up to this nice and slowly, and then burst through it. With these, I call them mongrel bars, because they're just bigger than anything else on the chart, but take you into the trade. And I hate that when that happens, because you're on a hiding to nothing straight away. And of course, I was sleeping at that time, so I didn't even see it happen. What have we got? Aussie yen.
Do you know what the mongrel bar is after it's formed?
Sorry,
or is it only when you see the retracement that you recognise it as a mongrel bar?
No, as soon as I see it, as soon as I see it, I know it's a mongrel, because I know there's going to be retracement.
So, and what defines the mongrel?
Well, it comes from your toes and goes to your head.
Right.
So
just an overextension.
Yeah, it's just an overextension that inevitably gets to exactly where your entry is, and then pulls back straight off it.
Yeah. So in a normal environment, if you've seen that bar and it's taking you in there, would you have closed the trade?
Probably.
Yeah.
Certainly some of it.
Yeah.
Certainly some of it, because the potential is, I mean, sometimes it can go and that's fine, but the potential is that you'll get a far better entry at some stage than the one that you had. And the way this looks, with an hour and a bit to go, if that is a reversal bar, then the entry is here rather than here. So
yes,
you know, that's why they're mongrel bars, really.
Don't
gotcha, them one little bit, and there's absolutely nothing you can do about it unless you're there at the time to react and say, well, okay, I don't want full risk on this anymore. I just want to cut this in half and hope that I get a better entry.
Yeah. I think that may be, you know what, I quite like that as a potential topic of conversation. What is the kind of breakout that what's the kind of entry that you want to see, and what do you do if you don't see that? Because we talk about what we want to see when it comes down to the entry and the area that we want to take profit. But there's also, I mean, certainly for us, I agree with you. There's certain bars that when you get taken in, there's certain things that you don't want to see straight after that's happened.
Absolutely. And that's the prime example. In fact, there's not too many better examples than exactly what's happened there, because you're defenseless. You really are defenseless. You know that your analysis is right, everything's right, except that, and this, mind you, this bar here is on the back of a poor number on, where are we, Wednesday, a poor sentiment number. So the market's rallied for whatever reason on that number and figured out, well, why did it rally? That's why I call it a mongrel bar. There's no reason for it to happen.
Yeah.
And if anything, it's gone against market sentiment at the time, or where market sentiment should be. So, yeah, one of those things. Up with it, which we must put. Not
Yeah.
going to change anything because there's nothing. There's really nothing there to do. It's just hope, and when you're hoping, it's not a good position, but you that's the way it is. You said you liked Aussie yen. If I wasn't in this Aussie short right now, if I wasn't in this Aussie and negative right now, and I could add some risk, I'd certainly be trading this one, this bar here. It's pretty much exactly the same as I am trading on the Aussie.
Yeah.
And this being the 4 hour chart, there's tons of room here to take profit, tons of room.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I see that as a very nice entry. What I'd like to see happen again is the daily pivot to be tested, and maybe there's even a better entry to come if that's the case. But I don't think we're going to see the daily pivot tested here today. I think we're just going to shoot straight through here and go to the top. And I can't add to my position right now because I'm negative and at full risk, so can't do anything.
Right.
Pound Aussie. Look, if this were to retrace to the weekly pivot, I'd be all over it. But I don't. I actually don't see that happening. I see this actually tumbling, and there's nothing I can do about that either. If perchance it did on the smaller time frames manage to get to any form of resistance, it would be a pretty cool place to look for an entry short, I believe. And the likelihood of that happening is very low, in my humble opinion. But if it does, it's certainly there. So take a look at it. If you get a nice reversal off the daily pivot or off the weekly pivot, go for it. After all, it seems to be doing exactly what I've just described. Look at this reversal bar, bang, reversal bar, bang, going the other way, reversal bar, bang, all happening off the daily pivot. And I'm not sure where you get in here, but maybe that bar. And away you go again. This bar, bit tough, maybe that one. Away you go. So it's still all happening on pound pairs. There are opportunities there. So don't be shy. Be careful. Be cautious. Just
Yeah.
low risk is
Yeah.
the whole way we do it. I think
Yeah. Yeah.
that,
Because
that
we're getting so close now to the end of the year, aren't we? And this is just such a significant time.
yes, very much so. But I think it's don't trade or trade as you normally would, but with low risk. I think that's
Yeah.
the key. Pound yen, look, same. Anything that's got a pound in it, you've absolutely got to be thinking, give me a retracement, please. Just give me something that I can get short on. And pound yen is not there. Euro pound, obviously this in reverse is what you're looking for. Daily pivot test here would have been nice with just a tiny reversal bar. That's all you'd need to have a crack at that. But that said, from a technical point of view, this is getting very, very much an overbought scenario. Although it's only 120 pips from the weekly pivot, it's not such a bad thing. Retracement deep would be good, but I can't see that happening anytime soon either. So it's probably just take opportunities if they arise. Cable, we've spoken about, it's exactly the same. Euro yen is absolutely in the wrong position for me to be trading it. It's dead set in the middle of that range. And what I'd be seeking here is probably another dose of monthly pivot blues, I guess. And if I got something like that sitting on the monthly pivot with half the size of the candle, then I'd be more than happy to trade that short. But it's not there yet. Euro US dollar. This is obviously the main focus for me most days, except the last few weeks because of the uncertainty surrounding everything. But when I look at this from a technical point of view, it's screaming at me. It really is screaming at me that there's a long here somewhere. Gee whiz, it's hard to trade that though, given the circumstances. Why do I say that? Well, this range that we've been creeping down to the bottom of, yet only had really one close, maybe two closes below it. But interestingly, one break of this channel here and then one retest of this channel here, which resulted in a big bullish engulfing bar. We've gone into massive consolidation through this Brexit bullshit, come down off the former monthly pivot, which of course is the top of the current, or the smaller range, if you like. And now we're down to the bottom of it again. If we can't break through here, I'd have to ask the question, why? Why can't we break through here when everything is seemingly against euro and pound, certainly against the dollar at the moment? If we get into next week and we're still here, this is why today's CPI figure coming out of the States is super important, in my humble opinion, because what it can do, if it's really off, then does the Fed go and say, well, okay, we're not going to raise interest rates in 2019, or we've said as much? Do we really need this last interest rate rise this year? Do they actually say that to themselves?
Yeah, that's a really good question, mate. I mean, I don't think we're going to get it. Just from what I read, anyway, it doesn't seem to me like we're going to get it. But you know, it's difficult. I'm really on top of what's going on with the UK economy and the UK geopolitical situation. But when it comes down to the United States, it's still a little bit, you know, considering how widely reported it is, and it is the main story on Bloomberg day after day. I'm still a little bit in the dark of how they run things over there. There seems to be so many different players.
Isn't everybody?
You know, I mean, Donald Trump. I don't know how many people that Donald Trump has sacked and then, you know, brought somebody new in, and that's the main battle I have with the United States, and you know, how to read the United States economy, because they're always, you know, you kind of turn around and there's a new Fed leader, and
chief of staff. There's a new FBI boss.
Yeah,
there's a new judge. There's a new this. There's a new...
Yeah, this is the problem, and I think it makes it quite hard to stay on top of. So what you're saying about the raising the Fed, raising the interest rates, the stuff I've read is that probably won't happen. You know, they probably won't raise the interest rates the next time around.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, but you know, for next week, yeah.
Okay.
The stuff I've read is that probably won't happen. But as I say, the challenge is trying to kind of sift through what's real and what's not. You know, who do you rely on? Because as I say, there's always somebody different to listen to in the United States.
If you're of that opinion, there is no better time to trade against the dollar than right now, I would have thought, before everybody gets into the okay, they're not going to raise interest rates mode.
Yep, absolutely. Well, it does seem to be a little bit weaker. I mean, there's been some really lovely trades, actually, I thought, against the dollar. The dollar Swissy, I thought, was a great trade. Now, where is that gone now? Oh, yeah, here it is.
I'm thinking,
the dollar.
I'm thinking dollar yen.
The dollar yen.
Yeah,
you see, I don't see.
Are we going risk off? That's
okay. So if you're thinking about the fundamentals, then I suppose you'd be right on that. The Swissy would still just about qualify, though, on that front. And if I look at this, so let me bring you what I was looking at before. There was a lovely entry on this dollar Swissy on the dailies. At this point here, you know, left shoulder, head, right shoulder, really nice head and shoulders pattern for the first aspect of it. It also was sat on a point of horizontal resistance as well. Fairly good line along here, so you know that support became resistance, and it started to move to the downside. We may well have sprung forward into its next kind of phase, if you like, along here. Which means that this could be we might well have broken down the neckline of this head and shoulders pattern. So I like this. I like this dollar Swiss. I don't really see too much. I mean, I could make a case actually as well on the RSI, but it wouldn't be too clean. So I won't mention that because it's maybe a bit advanced. But you know, with this kind of stuff here, it looks to me like we've got this level here. We've probably got this potential level here as well. So I think price is closing in on some areas of resistance. And if we bring in the fact that we do, you know, occasionally see the Swissy as a bit of a safe haven as well, then we can utilize that. So I think on a fundamental basis that the Swissy looks like a fairly decent option. On a technical basis, it looks to me at this stage to be the cleanest and best potential opportunity to trade the dollar short. Maybe we're waiting a day or so. I mean, let's have a look at this on some other charts as well and see if.
I don't think you'd be looking at pound US dollar. Although that said, if that were to turn around, you get a lot of bang for your buck.
Oh God, I mean, yeah, absolutely. The trouble with the pound is that it's way too early, because even with some good news, that good news will certainly turn around again. We really need the certainty, you know, to come from the UK.
Yes, definitely.
So this looks pretty good. I think this looks pretty good, and I think we're at a fairly significant level here. Now I look at this on the hourly, and yes, I've got an inverted head and shoulders, if you like, on the hourly. But the fact that we are pretty much on top of the neckline suggests that this could actually be a point of return, if you like. So I'm not sure whether it's going to really, you know, ultimately collapse from this point, and I don't know whether people would particularly want to trade at this triple top area. But I think this is a pretty good spot, because you'd be right or right back out.
So is that still dollar Swissy?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. So this to me has got some room. Now I haven't checked the pivots, so I will quickly do that as well. Yeah, probably under the weekly pivot. You know, getting closes under the weekly pivot. Maybe we are waiting for this pattern to break down, which is going to get a bit close to the dailies. But I think under the weekly pivot, and we potentially got something that to trade on dollar Swissy to the downside. But I will look out for it. But yeah, but you know, I could be wrong, and maybe the news isn't the best thing. I'd want to see the dollar. I wouldn't want to see the dollar Swissy weaken in isolation, considering it is the market of the day, if you like. You know, with CPI is an important figure. I'd want to see the dollar weaken across the board, just to show that that the dollar is perceived to maybe have numbers that would suggest not having the rate hike. So if it did weaken across the board, I'd want to see, you know, the big six, and make sure that that was the case, and maybe even gold as well. But if it was weakening across the board, then I think this dollar Swissy would be a pretty good option. I see the pound is on a bit of a rally. Dollar yen looks like it could be putting in some sort of 15-minute reversal bar, but we've got 7 minutes to wait for that. Now the Aussie is hitting that zone and just having a bit of a rally, isn't it, mate? Which is good. Dollar CAD. In fact, why am I doing this on a screen that you guys can't see? There we go.
There's a bit of movement at the moment. There's no news, is there? No.
There's no news, but as I said, I think that there's going to be some positions to be taken here. This is the euro, so the euro is attempting to go to the upside against the dollar. The pound is attempting and actually on the move against the dollar. The yen, less so, but we certainly had some weakness, and it you know, if we look at this on a 15-minute bar, the 15-minute bar suggests that we could be starting to get some weakness. We see the Aussie attempting to push forward. Dollar CAD pushing to the downside, so there is a bit of movement against the dollar right now. So I quite like this dollar Swissy. You know, as I say, looking at it across the board, it looks like we got some weakness stepping in. It just, you know, it depends if this is enough of a clear signal. We you know, that news isn't out yet, so it's unlikely to fly. So I'd like to see a lower high, really.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, we can look for. I will look for news. I actually just you know, I follow Tottenham.
Yep.
Tottenham were. I was just on the BBC website for work purposes. I was just, getting ready to kind of have a look at some business stuff. But I just clicked on sport, and I noticed Tottenham were they were 1-0 down yesterday against Barcelona, so getting knocked out of the Champions League. But they've turned it around. They got a 1-1, and they've got the last laugh. They're in.
And Liverpool did as well, eh?
Yes, they did. Oh, you know that bit.
Ah, mate, I'm all over it.
Yeah, they beat Napoli, equalised against Barcelona, and then tonight we've got Man City. So anyway, we were meant to have that, weren't we? Right then, so we got live. Theresa May faces Tory no confidence vote. Let's see what we got here. UK Prime Minister Theresa May will face a no confidence vote in her leadership. Are you about to look at charts, mate? 5 minutes, right?
Yes, when you're done.
Okay. Conservative MPs will vote between 6 GTMs. This is important to know. GMT, sorry. So 6 o'clock and 8 o'clock tonight. The challenge to Mrs May's position comes after the required 48 letters calling for a contest were delivered. Mrs May, who has been Prime Minister since shortly after the UK vote to leave the European Union in 2016, has faced criticism from her own party for the Brexit plan she has negotiated. I probably should talk a bit slower if we've got some Singaporeans listening. It is not yet known how quickly the result of the vote will be announced, but Mrs May needs to get a majority in her favour to win. If that happens, she cannot be challenged for at least another year. Now, that is key. Because that takes us well beyond Brexit. Now, when we were in Bali... yeah, maybe, yeah. When we were in Bali, I said that Jacob Rees-Mogg was going to put together a vote of no confidence, but he wouldn't do it unless he thought he could win. Now, the fact that this is happening suggests to me that those Conservatives think they're going to win. Most of those guys are pretty clever. Jacob Rees-Mogg didn't end up winning enough people to support him in that vote of no confidence, but these guys are very clever, very calculated, and very career-oriented. So they will know what they're doing when it comes down to this. Now, they are up against somebody that I have got a huge amount of respect for her resilience, and maybe that plays a part in this story, in this picture. But the fact that they are putting it through suggests that they're not going to put it through on a whim. Is my point here. So if because they know she could last another year, a stay of execution for a year. So if Mrs May does not win the vote, there could be then be a Conservative leadership contest in which she could not stand. This is also an option that if Mrs May won, but not overwhelmingly, she may decide to stand down as party leader. Because the Conservative Party is the largest party in the House of Commons, whoever is leader of the party would be expected to be Prime Minister.
Okay.
So that's how that breaks down. And I'm not sure if I'm allowed to put up a BBC. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to broadcast a BBC. So I better not. Okay. So let me just tell you. You got what? Another letter?
Yeah.
And what was that about?
I was playing music in the background.
Again?
Yep. Forgot all about it. Whoops. Gone again.
What were you playing this time?
I wonder how many strikes you get.
Well, I think one, because they banned us from the countries, haven't they? So yeah, only one strike. Right then, so let me tell you how it goes. So we got how the new Conservative leader is elected. 48 plus letters to the 1922 committee. 15% of Tory MPs, that's 15% of the Tory MPs are in the House of Commons. That would be given the 48%. Vote of no confidence in the leader. And the secret ballot, the leader wins and she stays for a year. She loses and it goes to stage 2. You get one candidate, 2 candidates, or 3 candidates, 3 or more candidates. Candidates with the lowest vote is eliminated. Okay, well that's probably all kind of a bit superfluous at this particular stage. So yeah, it looks like that's going to be turmoil until between 6 and 8. Now I don't know when the result happens. I would have thought fairly soon. They'll probably count it up fairly soon. But UK politics is certainly not boring.
They don't know when it's going to be semaphored either.
They don't know when it's going to be what, mate?
Semaphore, when we're going to find out what the result is. But
No,
I guess we'll
I
find out by watching pound US dollar.
yes, yeah. I mean, I suspect it'd be on the same day. I mean, we've got a little bit of news on the pound, but I think it's pretty much what we know.
What can happen?
No incentive. Go on, mate.
What can happen? Let's look at the best and worst case scenarios where I don't know what the best case is. Let's say she wins the vote of no confidence.
Yeah.
What's the market do? Not much. Maybe.
No, I wouldn't have thought so. It puts us back to a Mexican standoff, doesn't it? At that point, if she wins the vote of no confidence, and if anybody can win it, it'd be her.
And if she loses.
Oh, if she loses, well, this is the interesting thing, isn't it? And this is what I was talking about earlier.
Yeah,
Sometimes you don't. I mean, it will tank. It will tank to a degree, but sometimes you don't know whether things have been priced in. So I think there will be jittery. There will be a jitter if she gets the vote of no confidence. There'll be jittery movement, but after that, maybe it gets back to that kind of level because it is so significant, that level, and that the whole thing gets priced in at that point. But
yeah,
who knows?
I don't think it can be priced in now because it really only happened overnight, didn't it?
Yeah, I mean, yes, it did. It did. You're right. Yeah, it did only happen
really
overnight.
Hasn't had time to adjust to that. I don't think it has. Maybe it has.
Yeah,
I don't see anything massive in the market that suggests that we have had a reaction to the potential of no confidence. It still seems indecisive to me. We've had a little bit of a rally, to be fair. Pound's gone to the daily pivot, but it's currently putting in what looks to be a doji on the 4-hour chart. Euro pound doing the same, hanging around the daily pivot. So there's not a lot of certainty going on here, in my opinion, anyway.
No, well, look, this is what we're talking about. But the market at no point to me looked too attractive. It doesn't look like it doesn't look like a nice prospect today. I don't see anything that clean, and when I don't see things that clean, it suggests that there could be a little bit of quiet. Right up until when we get.
I mean, when I look at euro pound and pound, and I'm seeing that form, that's telling me everything I need to know. And
absolutely.
The market's waiting for this result, and when it comes, if it's the wrong result for the market's going to shoot somewhere.
Absolutely, and you could end up getting taken in on a spread, which is the other difficult thing, for us. It's one of those that you've kind of got to get in when it's rallying and quiet. If you want to trade the pound short, you've got to get in when it's rallying and quiet, rather than trying to get in at these particular levels.
Yeah, I don't think I'm too keen to jump in full stop at the moment.
No,
I know
I'm not.
There's some great reward available. I know that, fully get it, but I'm just not sure where it's going to lie.
Yeah, I'm completely with you, mate.
Have to be wide. Yeah,
completely with you. I mean, I've got a FTSE 100 market which is showing some technical signs of reversing here. But again, it's in fact, let me bring this up on this chart as well. I've got some technical signs that we could actually start to move back to the upside, but I don't really have a trend line that I particularly trust that has been tested just yet. Maybe this takes a little bit longer, and this is the interesting thing, isn't it? And I always say this to people about candles when they start to see, there's a hammer, there's an engulfing bar, there's a train track reversal. None of that stuff matters if it's got no context. And I think that's what I've got here. I've got a technical signal to buy here, but I'm not sure my context is good enough when it comes down to the fact that no test of this trend line, no test of the daily pivot. We're kind of in no man's land for our signals here. So I'm not really too interested at this stage.
Yeah, look, I'm pretty much the same, and I don't see anything extra to add, frankly. The 30-minute charts aren't telling me. Well, they're telling me a few things. Maybe I can just duck through these, and if we've really got nothing more to add, then we might just bail out. Let's see. there might be something. Let's have a look. There's generally something to look at. I'm going to
Yeah.
start with Euro Aussie and go back to the 30-minute charts because we just had 30-minute candles close. It's a little bit interesting because if I put in a couple of trade lines here, what I've got something that I like. Actually, that's not the trade line. That's the trade line. But it hasn't panned out either. I've got a little break and retest of this trend line. Once that happens, I get rid of this and go to another the trend line, that is, because if it hasn't panned out, it hasn't panned out. So that would have been, well, it'd be still in the market, be looking pretty sick, to be fair. And I don't know that there was a TP1 available. I doubt it. Maybe, just maybe, might have been a break-even trade actually. But it's also very, very tricky. I would love to have traded that because there's a daily pivot untested above me, and the interesting part about untested daily pivots is Euro is particularly right up there numbers wise in that probability factor. So when I've got a Euro untested daily pivot, I tend to go there. Interesting when I look at this chart, and maybe this is the thing at the moment. No test, no test, no test, no test on that entire chart. No test. I don't think I've ever seen this before. 1, 2, 3, 4, potentially 5 days of an untested daily pivot.
Yeah.
That's pointing me. That's pointing me in this direction. It really
Yeah.
is. And that doesn't suit me, of course, because I'm short the Aussie. If that's the case, maybe that's a hedge I need to take. I don't know. But I'm just not seeing the entry here at the moment. There was a potential here, and we've missed that. Don't know, mate. I'm getting very interested though.
In the Euro.
Euro Aussie,
Euro Aussie. Okay. Have a look.
but I can't see a way in there.
Are you looking for long?
Yeah,
Yeah.
only short
Yeah.
term, but only short term. But you
Inverted
know,
head and shoulders is of interest.
I'd like to trade it up to here.
Okay, so what am I
But it
getting?
has turned around. We've got a bearish engulfing bar here. We've got a series of lower highs and potential. That's what I'd like to say. I'd love to see the daily pivot tested with a reversal bar, and that's a short signal. That's what I'd like to see. So there's no trade there for me at the moment. Euro CAD. When I have a look at the CAD, I always have a look at oil and see what oil's doing. Now, oil surprisingly to me has not rallied.
Yeah.
With the OPEC news last week, where they decided to reduce production by, I can't remember how many barrels, 125 million or something per day. I can't remember, but it seemed a significant number to me, and I think that was this candle here, from memory. Where are we? Wednesday, Tuesday, Monday, Friday. That happened on Friday. Maybe it happened on Thursday. I'm not sure, but anyway, it happened, and the market did try to rally, but it failed. So maybe there's still some downside in oil. And I guess when you have a look at this chart, you'd be thinking, okay, big bear move, big trend, if you like, back to where? What is this bouncing off?
But because it didn't quite get to the monthly pivot, did it?
No, nor did it get to this low. Or did it? Maybe it did. No, I don't think it did. It's the same level.
Yeah.
So, yeah, this is tricky. This is really tricky. Certainly, we've gone into consolidation. There's no question there. I can't draw a conclusion from this, I'm afraid. It's got me rattled because I'm expecting bullishness, and I'm not getting it on the back of good news. Why? That doesn't. There's no logic there for me. So I'm going to have to leave that out of the equation and go. Okay, trade what's in front of you. And what's in front of me here on EuroCAD is not dissimilar to what I've just described. But I don't have highs for me in the strategic places, unfortunately. Really, what I've got is a trend line that looks something like this. So I'm probably waiting for another test of that before I can trade. And if I do, am I really thinking long here? I don't know. I just don't have
Yeah.
anything I can hang my hat on, mate, I'm afraid. So I'll just
Yeah.
move on.
Yeah. Yeah. I completely agree.
Moving on. Euro versus the dollar. Again, tough to be thinking long here, but gee, there's a great target if you can get in down here somewhere in the daily pivot and the monthly pivot. I don't see a way that I can do that right now because I'll be too close to this level to trade it. So I'd need to probably find some resistance here. There's a tiny little resistance trend line going through there. So if I found that, then bounced off it and could play maybe a false break of the support, that's what I'd be looking for. But do I really want to trade the euro long against the dollar? That's the burning question. Look,
Mm.
the answer is if I got a double bottom here as a result of this false break, I think I would because that'd be strong enough a signal for me to take the trade. But again, it would be at very small risk.
Yeah.
Euro yen.
Yeah.
Look, I'm expecting there'll be yen strength, but gee whiz, I can't get a handle on the timing of it. I just can't. When I look at this chart, it's a mess. We're definitely in a zone, if you like, and if we go even tighter, that zone is even tighter. Where's this going to break? Goodness only knows. The monthly pivot is being respected very, very much so. Certainly last month, if you have a look at it, it was the flavour of the month. It's starting to be exactly that again with price not ready to go through it. I think I could probably respect that, especially if I get some confluence here with this trend line, monthly pivot trend line, reversal bar. Maybe that's a way to find a short. I think I'll be interested in that, given that I do have an opinion that the yen will strengthen. But again, timing is everything. Maybe it is on the back of um, the Fed next week not going. Maybe it is. Maybe that's the catalyst. Or let's face it, it could be anything to do with Brexit. It could be anything to do with China.
Yeah.
Why am I going on and on and on? It's very much a guessing game. But if I
Yeah.
see this, if I see what I'm looking for, then I'm happy to trade euro yen short. Cable, I think I'm just going to skip it. It is too tough right now. We've discussed it, and look, we're looking for a rally to trade short. And tomorrow we'll come back, and this has gone another 100 pips, and we'll say, well, why didn't we trade that? Well, what bar am I trading? How can I trade that? I can't trade that bar, not in 100 years. If I got now maybe a backup, maybe if price fell a bit here, then came back here, gave me a lower high, then I could trade it. But this candle's just thrown everything into complete and utter dismay. I can't trade that in any way, shape, or form. And if this now goes long, where do I then find a short? Well, probably at the next resistance level. So maybe that's what I'm looking for. Maybe get this rally out of the way. Maybe that rally needs to be just a little bit more than I'm anticipating the daily pivot to have been. So that's what I'll be looking for, I guess. If I look for anything, I'm half inclined to just say, okay, I don't want to really play with this today, because these candles now are telling me they're waiting for the vote. That's what they're telling me.
Mm. Yeah.
Pound exactly the same. The last three bars are exactly the same, and they're all about the pound and the euro, which means they're all about Brexit. They're all about what's going to happen. Aussie yen. Look, I'd like to find, to be absolutely frank, I'd like to find a significant lower high here, but I don't think I'm going to, because I think this is going long. Technically, I'm looking for a short, but I can't see that. I can't see any way that's going to happen unless we get back to this area and put in a lower high just below the monthly pivot. That would be a signal to trade to the daily pivot. Short term for me, because I think this is going long at some stage. if I got the opportunity to trade this short now, maybe off. Let's put there's any number of potential trend lines going through here. So let's give this a scenario. Maybe we're there already. Maybe let's call that a test. Maybe we come off it and come back and give us a low test bar sitting here. That would suit me, and I would be happy to trade that to daily pivot, not beyond, but a nice little bar here to get me down to the daily pivot I'd be happy with, and then I'd start looking for longs again. And the Aussie, look, it's struggling, isn't it? It's really struggling to get through these highs. If it does, happy days. Not a great candle, that doji bar sitting there, but if you're not in the long already, it's not the worst candle I've ever traded, I can assure you. But I really don't see any compulsion to get into the market here. Certainly in my position, because I'm long here, I certainly wouldn't be looking to add to that at this point. So, mate, I think I'm at the point where I just have to sit and wait, like everybody else seems to be, and see what happens with Theresa.
Yeah, I think you're right. Interesting. While you were looking through your charts there, I was reading that the pound actually rallied. It says that the headline is "Pound jumps on Theresa May facing leadership challenge." So it kind of goes to show what the city thinks about Theresa May as a leader. So that could be a damning indictment in itself. But yeah, well, let's come up. We're back in an hour, is it?
You are. I'm not.
Oh, you're not. Yes, of course you're not. Okay, mate. Well, enjoy the rest of your day. I will be back in an hour. See how this market shapes up. FTSE 100 certainly looks technically like an area to go long, but well, let me say that a different way. There's a setup for the FTSE 100 to go long, but it's not in an area that I'm particularly interested. So I'm going to let this one pass. And I will speak to you tomorrow then, buddy.
All right, mate. Happy days. I'll be here. There is there's not some chance. There's every chance. In fact, I won't be here on Monday. I'll be flying.
Okay.
So I'm not sure if you're in on Monday.
I'll be here. Yes, I will. I will. Yeah, take the helm. Not a problem at all.
Happy days.
All right, buddy. Have a great evening.
All right, mate. You too. Catch you tomorrow.
See you later.
Bye.